Hey everybody, Becca here from Inside the Square. Good morning. So in perfect timing, I'm having an allergy attack right now. So if I start like my eyes are watering, it's not because I'm super excited about code. It's just allergies. I'm not crying because I'm so happy we're playing with the computer today. Anyway, good morning. I hope you can hear me. I'm going to look over here on my screen to see if I've got the comments going. Let me know in the comments. I had some issues with my audio last time. Can you hear me okay? I've got a brand new microphone over here. I don't know if you can see it. It looks pretty cool. I was excited about that. So hopefully we're going good. Okay, I'm seeing some volume going on here. It looks like we are okay. Welcome to the first ever Coffee and Code. I do have my cup of coffee here today. I have it in my super cool Area 15 from Las Vegas color changing mug, getting into very space themed over here today. I'm very happy about it. I promise you, this is still my first cup, so hopefully I won't talk too fast for this, but I thought it would be a really fun way to show some live code support for people who are asking questions on my videos, sending me emails. Definitely let me know if you have any questions. I'll keep an eye on the comments to see what's going on, but I do have a few to kickstart it. My goal was to cover 10 questions today, and I think I have at least 6, maybe 7, so I'd love to take a few more. If you have any custom code questions or Squarespace questions, pop them into the comments and we'll get going. I'm seeing Kathy in there. Hey, Kathy, thanks for letting me know. All right, let's get into it. We've got some fun codes to work through. I'll have a sip of my coffee. Here we go. Now it's time to code. Let's do this. Okay, I've got my tab open here, and I'll go ahead and scroll down. Daniel had posted asking about showing a second image on a hover. Hover effects are such a popular thing to talk about. I have a longer tutorial coming up about hover effects that I'll share with you very soon. Make sure you subscribe to my channel to check that one out. But I wanted to show you the simplicity of creating a second image on a hover effect using an image block in Fluid Engine. So what I'm going to do is hop here into edit mode, and I have 2 images. I have Gus the pineapple in his sunglasses. I named him Gus, and I love using him for image tutorials. And then I have not Gus with his gerbils here. So what we're going to do using Fluid Engine is we're going to create layers. We're going to have this image hover over that other image. Now the next thing we're going to do is change the opacity. Opacity means level of transparency. So what I want to do is make sure that this image, the one on the top, becomes invisible when I hover over it. And I can do that using its block ID. A block ID is a unique number given to every piece of content inside a Squarespace website. Every content block, every auto layout, every page section, every page, they all have a unique number. This unique ID can help me say in code, when you see this thing, and when we hover over it, set its opacity to 0. That's the code we're going to create. So I realized I moved that image up a little quickly, and I'll show you why here. I have a free Chrome extension I use to grab this block ID. Not affiliated, just a huge fan. I'll link to it in the description below. It's also available at insidethesquare.co/Chrome EXT. Again, I'll link below if you don't have it already, but I'll click on that Chrome extension and we'll see multiple block IDs here. That's why I wanted to move the image so I could grab the right one. I'm going to click on this to copy that block ID. All right, let's put it back on top of the other image. Everything's the same size. It's completely covered. We'll select Save and Exit, and we're going to add some custom code. All right, I'm going to navigate to Website, then Website Tools, then Custom CSS, and we'll remove what's there. That was an old code. All right, I just realized my bookmarks bar is showing. Thanks for letting me know. We're good? Okay, so scrolling down here, we've got our 2 images. We have not Gus. He's over Gus. So I'm going to add the block ID, and I'm going to say hover. So anytime we hover over any aspect of this block, we're going to apply the code that comes up next. I'll open up a curly bracket, and I'll say opacity 0. And now, when we hover over the image, it completely disappears. So what we're doing with this code is we just had to translate what we wanted into computer speak. And we had to say, when you see the specific block, if I'm hovering over it, do whatever happens in between these parentheses. And what we want to do is make it an opacity 0 or completely transparent on a hover. All right, that was our first custom code question. I deserve another sip of coffee. We're going to do it. Awesome. I'm seeing some comments in here. It's fantastic. We will absolutely get to those. Thanks so much for joining me live. This is fun. Not just me and playing with my computer, but interacting with people kind of online. I love it. Okay, second question from Quentin. Oh, that's right. He sent in this email, and I wanted to highlight this because I get questions like this often. He needs a daily challenge quiz. He wants it to be a single question with a multiple choice answer. He wants it to be stylish and pretty. He wants an audio file to play with it and images that accompany the answers. Someone clicks on the actual answer and it tells them if it's right or not. That is not CSS. That right there is an actual function. What you want to do is have the computer give content based off of a user's action. That requires a function, and that requires another code language. A code language like JavaScript or jQuery, it could require you to embed a different program into Squarespace, but I wanted to use this specific example for our first ever Coffee and Code to highlight the third thing he listed here. Be stylish and pretty. Font colors, font styles, different options like that, that is CSS. CSS is cascading style sheet, and it's how we adjust the style of a program. CSS is a part of every single website that you've ever visited. Squarespace writes CSS for you based on what you select in the design menu, and we add custom CSS to make changes for things we can't do in the design menu. But when we're talking about something that has all of these details, that is an actual program, an actual function, you're going to need to find additional code to create that. A JavaScript plugin, somebody might be able to build it with jQuery. That's a different type of program. That's a function, not a design. Now, I do want to mention this code because if you find a third-party program or you find a plugin that works within Squarespace, we can probably change the CSS of it to give it a cool border or make sure the fonts match the fonts on your website. But anytime you're talking about adding a functionality where the program is going to respond to someone's action, that's going to be a different code language. CSS changes the style, and it's how we can do more advanced style changes based off of the design menu inside Squarespace. We say, hey, we saw that design menu, but actually we want it to be this font family or this font color. So that's when we pull into code. So I probably answered 2 or 3 questions a day that aren't actually CSS, and I just wanted to make sure I clarified that. I'll probably do an upcoming podcast episode where I get into the details there, but CSS is the style. Okay, you're with me on that one. Oh, I even wrote a little thing about it. That's cool. I forgot to mention hypertext markup language. You might have heard that one before as well. HTML, it defines the layout and the presentation of the content, and it puts things in order. We will talk about that later. We absolutely will. I've got another question about that. That's going to be a fun one. Okay, here we go. Next question came from Amy. She said, for some reason, I'm struggling to figure out how to get a custom bullet point for a single section since the original code showed up everywhere. This is the original code that she used. She said she tried to grab the section ID and even the block ID and replace that asterisk with one of those, but instead of applying it there, it's not working at all. And that right there is the problem. She replaced the wrong part of the code to isolate something unique. So this code right here says in a list item, when you see any text that's formatted as a list and you see any symbol that's listed as the first symbol, it's going to be placed before the text. I want it to be this color. I'll hop in here and we'll make this bullet point real quick just so we can see this magic happen in action. Here, we'll add a new block and we're going to say 1, 2, 3, and we'll give those all bullet points. And now we'll pull that over here and let's duplicate it. I think that's, yeah, this one. There we go. Duplicated. We'll save, we'll exit, and let's take a look at this code together. Scrolling down here, we've got this code. We're going to place it right here, and you'll notice the bullet points have now changed color. Let's go ahead and make those solid white so they're even more obvious, standing out even more. They used to be the solid black color like the font, and we've changed just the bullet point color. Now what she did was she grabbed the block ID, which we've done before. We'll grab the block ID for this very first one, and she replaced the asterisk with the block ID, and it rendered the whole thing not working. That's because the asterisk is a part of the symbol itself. The block ID is the entire container that content is in. So in her code, what it had said was if you see a list item, if you see a content block, grab the first thing before the content block and change its color. There's no first thing before the content block. We have to place that at the very start of our code. And now just the first block gets the color change. Let's change it to red. Maybe that'll stand out more. There we go. Even more obvious. So again, when we're translating code, if we're applying something to the entire block, that needs to go in the very beginning of it. Okay, so the asterisk, that was a part of the name of that individual bullet point for those list items. Saying block at the front of it is what's going to make it happen to any bullet point inside that block. I've got another example here on my screen for you. Let me scroll down a little bit. It's for this button right here. And yeah, that'll be a great example. Okay, so this button, I'm going to grab its block ID, and let's say we want to change its background color. We'll use the block ID and we'll say background color red, important to make sure the computer picks it up. And I want you to see the button background color didn't change because I added it to the whole block. What I want to do is change the button. So I need to say inside that block, if you see an SQS block button element, give that a background color of red. Pretty fascinating, right? So again, if I said block, give the block a background color, the computer's going to do that, and it'll do it for the whole thing. But what I want to change is the button inside that block. So I have to say inside this block, if you see a button, give it that background color. Okay, that was a fun lesson. I love talking about targeting tricks. That is the tip of the iceberg, my friend. There's so many more targeting tricks that you need to know about custom code for Squarespace. I do want to mention real quick, just going to drop this in here. Inside the chat, you'll find a link to this, but I have a guide on CSS basics. It talks about targeting, talks about installation techniques. Check that out inside the square.co/learn if you don't have this guide already. Okay, back here into our site. We've got some more. I'm going to have a sip of coffee. Join me if you can. Okay. I've got some more comments coming in there. I love it. All right, I'm going to answer the few more that I had lined up, and then we'll jump into those. We're only 15 minutes in, so we've got time. This is great. Okay, so Sarah just asked here, let's see. She did a code, and the code worked, but all of a sudden, her code was showing up at the top of the page. And she said, I even tried deleting the code altogether, and it's still there. Help. I got you, Sarah. Don't worry. So the reason why she's seeing code at the top of the page is because she installed it in the page header. There are 3 ways to add code to Squarespace, and most of the time, I recommend doing it right here in your custom CSS. I'll back out of here to show you how I got to that file. I said website, website tools, custom CSS. This right here places your code at the end of the CSS file that Squarespace already wrote for you. That file loads on every single page. That file tells the computer what fonts we're using, what colors we're using, the size things should be, if there are any animations happening. That whole file needs to load on every single page. But if you need to make a change to one specific page, let's say you want to have a custom font, but you only need that on one page, or you're doing a landing page like this one here, I had to hide the regular header and footer to create my own. That would be code I'd install on that one page because I don't need it everywhere. I need it to show up on that one spot. But the way that we do that is by adding it to page header code injection. That's the most common way. There is one other way. I'll cover it in your guide, but we're going to stick with the most common one. So let's see. I'll open up this tutorial page here. The way we do that is by clicking on this gear icon, selecting advanced, and this is where we add code, page header code injection. You can add any custom code you want here, and it's going to load on that page. It loads in the page header, but here's the tricky part. We can have more than one type of code. So if I add standard Squarespace code to this, and I'll say background color red, and close it, and select save, the computer doesn't know that that's a CSS code. So it's going to place it right here at the very top in the header of my page. It doesn't know that's supposed to be a style code. So if I click over here into advanced for the page header code injection, I need to say style. We've got to put that bracket at the front and put the bracket at the end. This right here says, I'm about to give you a style code. When you see this thing, do this thing. Okay, I'm done with my style code. You've got to close your bracket when you're done. We'll select save, and now that code's going to go away, but we will get that CSS change. I didn't add important. Let's do that real quick. I want to make sure we see that CSS change. That's another pro tip for you. If you're overwriting code that's already there, sometimes you have to add important to make sure the computer sees it. Okay, let's scroll down. There we go. Now our button is red and that code is no longer in the header. So when you're adding code to an individual page, because you don't want it on every page, you want it in one spot, make sure you add these brackets, style, and then /style at the end of it to say, this is a CSS code. Okay. Cool. Select save. I've got a few more in my list here, but I want to grab the ones for the folks that are in the chat just because I think that's kind of important. You're showing up live. Let's do this together. Okay. Mo Talks is in there. Hey, Mo, thanks for all your comments lately. I really appreciate it. The support means a lot to me. All right. They asked, is there a way to make the code block outline a color so that I can easily find it? I can never find it when I'm on a page unless I do Control A. Thanks. Such a good question. So we can add code to a code block on Squarespace. And this is a technique that I do myself when I'm creating things like a landing page that has a lot of different code changes to it. What we can do is inside the code block that we're editing, like let's say we're working on this page, we know we're going to have page header code injection, but instead of clicking out, refreshing the settings, going back in, we want to see our code changes live, right? We can put them in a code block to work on the page and then add that code to page header code injection when we're done. We'll double click here and we'll say, okay, this is a style code. We're going to add, let's see, we did the SQS block button element, background color red, important. And then we'll close that style code. Let's say we also want to maybe hide the header in this one. We can say header display none. There we go. That'll get rid of the header. We'll see it instantly while we're editing. But as soon as we click out of it, just like Mo mentioned there, we don't know where that code block is. We're clicking around. We're like, wait a second, I have more code to add. What happened to it? Oh, it's hiding over there. You can press Control A to see it, but let's say you don't even remember what page section it's in. What I like to do is add a border to that code block while I'm in edit mode, and then I'll just remove that when I'm done. So we clicked on that, turned off the extension. Let's see if we can edit the code block again. There we go. So now in the very beginning of my code, I'm going to make a little note for myself, and I'll say remove this because I'm going to need to remove it when I'm done. And I'll add it there and say border 1px solid red. And now we're going to get a border outline specifically for that individual code block so I can always find it when I'm checking stuff out. Okay? So that's a great way to add it in your code, but I also really recommend leaving yourself a reminder with a note like this so you know to remove that when you copy the code into your page header code injection. Okay, cool. We'll remove that real quick. All right, let's scroll up here. There was another one. Let's see, is there a way to extend the length of the navigation panel to hold more than a single line? Interesting question. So for the navigation panel, I think he's talking about the main menu up here. This is the outdoor dog photographer. So in your main menu, if you have multiple links there and you need them to expand to more than one line, you can always adjust the length of the spacing between the elements. I'm going to go ahead and go to my website menu and we'll add some pages here. Let's just drag these into there so we can talk about this. There we go. So we'll hop into edit mode, select edit site header, clicking onto our navigation and into edit. Oops, I forgot they changed it. We're going to click into design. There we go. Clicking into design. Link spacing is where we can adjust this. So I can manually adjust my link spacing like this to make it take up more space or less space. And then we can also adjust the size of the links as well. That's going to be done inside our design menu. So height, this is in reference to the entire header itself. You'll notice this affects everything. So if you want to change the size of the font for those links, use your design menu. And if you want to adjust the spacing between them to increase or decrease the width of the actual main navigation there, adjust your link spacing, not element spacing. Element spacing is going to be the button, the social media links, the shopping cart icon. Those are your elements. We're talking about link spacing. Okay, cool. I hope that was helpful. We'll save and exit, and we will exit. There we go. Let's refresh the page. Live Squarespace errors here in Coffee and Code. What a great reason to grab another sip of coffee. Let me know in the comments, are you in team coffee or tea? It's actually a little bit of a misnomer here. I'm not trying coffee today. I am actually having a Joey coffee replacement, Joe''y. It's this like kind of plant-based coffee stuff to try to get me to pull back on caffeine because I have too much caffeine on a regular basis. I'm trying to cut back a little bit. So this is like half coffee and half of that Joey stuff. It's kind of fun. Okay, let's scroll down here. All right, Wayne is asking a question. Wayne, thank you for asking that question. Legally, because of the NDA I signed with the Squarespace Circle, I'm not allowed to talk about that until it goes public, but I can talk a little bit about kind of the concept itself, because this has happened in the past. Every once in a while, Squarespace will change the name of things behind the scenes. And when they do that, we do need to update our code. As you've seen in some of the examples here, when we're trying to make changes to content inside a content block or inside a page, we need to make sure we're using the right code name or the right selector. For that button example, it was SQS block button element. That is for all buttons. If you want to target primary, that's a different one. Secondary, that's different. We had a major code change happen when we were talking about forms a while back. They updated one of the root names for styles inside a form when they gave us more form design options. It's rare, but it does happen sometimes. Now, fun fact, back in version 7 days when we had different theme families like Brine and Bedford, those had different names for things. There were different classes, there were different selectors, things were put in a completely different style. So we actually had to keep track of, we as Squarespace coders had to keep track of all of these different names. And it's why I started the Squarespace CSS cheat sheet, was to put all of that content into one place. Because if I'm working on a Bedford site, my code needed to be completely different than what I was doing for Brine. Brine had index pages and Bedford had these built-in hero banners. It was a totally different program when you had a different theme that you were working with, completely different codes to keep track of. So that's why I made the Squarespace CSS cheat sheet, and that's why it lives in Notion, because I can update it. So here, I'll show you an example. If we click into header elements, this I have for version 7 and 7.1 because these selectors are totally different. For Bedford, let's say the logo image, collection active homepage, that's the navigation button. In Brine, their main navigation is header nav primary, like completely different codes. So I started to keep track of them all in here. Luckily, in version 7.1, anytime they make a change to the entire code base, it's going to be for all 7.1 sites. So no matter what you've built on the latest version of Squarespace, you can update that one line of code or that one name. It's going to be the same across all of your current projects. So thank goodness for that. But we might be seeing more selector changes happening soon. They aren't selector changes I use in a lot of my sites, but some people do. And when they do happen, if you've got my Squarespace CSS cheat sheet, I'll let you know about it. I'll probably post an update on my YouTube channel as well, so be sure to subscribe. And if you do want a copy all of these codes, you can get lifetime access to this. It's got a lot of information in here. Some of my snippets too. Let's hop into those. These are fun. So for the form block example, here's where I let people know, hey, we got an update in May, and some of these are totally different. But you can also find some of my pre-made snippets down here, which are really fun. You can just copy and paste the codes I've already written for some of my other projects, put them into your own Squarespace site. So those are a lot of fun. That is at insidethesquare.co/CSS if you want a copy of it. There's a ton of fun stuff to explore. All right, so thanks for mentioning that, Wayne. I'm sorry I can't give more information. Being a Squarespace Circle leader, I had to sign an NDA that says I don't talk about Circle stuff until they make it public. So hopefully I'll be able to talk about it soon. But there are some ways to fix it. We'll do a quick control find in some of the other sites, and it'll be great. Okay, we've got another one here from Jessica. My website's sending an Ahref error, and I tracked it down to a drop-down menu. Oh, that's interesting. Okay, so Jessica, it sounds like she's having an error. Ahref is in reference to the web address, the entire name, and it sounds like it's an error with her drop-down menu where the folder is clickable. Now, inside Squarespace, when we have a folder like this drop-down right here, I'm going to show you, if I click on this icon, it has a URL slug. That's the unique location for it, but it's not a full page. This is just configuring the dropdown. So when I go to /dropdown for this domain, I'm not actually loading a page on my site. This is just a page that's holding, a folder that's holding content, but it's not a physical page where I can add a page section to it. I can't add a list section or a content block. It's just /dropdown. So that is not rendering as an actual page on your site. I would recommend linking to the URL slug for the actual page inside the dropdown. That could be what the issue is. Now, inside Squarespace, you can set up a URL redirect. I'll show you how to do that here. We're going to navigate to settings. We're going to, where did they hide it for us? I think it's under developer tools. It is URL mappings. This is where you can create a URL redirect for your dropdown. So this is where I was trying a little sample. We'll just remove that because it didn't work. But for this example, we can say /dropdown, and that's actually going to take them to, let's see, page, I can't remember what that was titled. I think it was page 1. And then we need to specify, is this a 301 redirect or a 302 redirect? So after you've added this to your code, that should fix your Ahref error because it's no longer sending people to a URL slug that isn't attached to page content. So it's not quite code, but it's definitely some fun technical stuff. I hope that helped, Jessica. If it didn't help, if that didn't fix the problem by adding this URL mapping to send it directly to a specific page, let me know. Send me an email and I'll help you out, okay? support@insidethesquare.co. Now, an example of these URL mappings, I use a ton of them. Let me show you one right now. If I go to insidethesquare.co/live, we're going to go to this video because I've set up that URL mapping to go directly to this YouTube video. I set it up here inside Squarespace where as soon as somebody typed in /live, they actually went to youtube.com/numbers, letters. And then I said 302 because I'm going to change it. So that's an example of a URL mapping. I use it for landing pages and stuff a lot too. One more example, insidethesquare.co/header. If we go here, that's going to take you to /tiny/header because my tiny tutorials are in a blog that's hidden underneath there. So that's a URL mapping. That'll be settings, developer tools, URL mappings. Lots of fun stuff to play with there. Okay. Hope that helped, Jessica. All right. Modern Dojo Design had a comment. Thank you. They said they have a gallery block that's a grid with 3 images, and they're trying to move the title of each image to the center of the image and have it display a white outline button with no fill. So for that, you are going to want to use the selector for that specific gallery block. Now it's going to be a little bit different depending upon what block you're using. Let's see if we can grab the code you need here. We'll hop into the cheat sheet. It's going to be somewhere in here. There we go. All right, so inside our gallery block, I've got some selectors here. It depends on your type. If it's a slideshow, that's going to be this selector. If it's a carousel, I don't think carousels have text. And stack image titles get this one. So you're going to want to grab that title. But from there, you can do all kinds of fun stuff. You can give it an outline. You can say text align center or content align center, justify content center. It'll respond to one of those for sure. I'm not sure which one for your specific gallery type. But let's talk about turning something into that button style really quick. Borders and padding, they can make anything a button on your Squarespace site. Here on Learn CSS Basics for Squarespace, this landing page, I want you to see my button on this side here. That's just a text block. That's a text block, and I said inside this text block, I want you to give it a background and a border. And when I hover over it, change that border color. Isn't that cool? It looks like a button, but it's not. It's a super sneaky way to customize it. So let's go ahead and do that for some text here. How about we do that for this next question, which we'll totally talk about next. I'll grab this block ID and we'll go ahead and navigate to CSS. I'm just clicking there on my keyboard here. We'll say, here's the block ID. Let's give it a border of 1px solid red. Let's make it 5 so it's really big. And this is why I wanted to show you the specific example. I want you to see that this border is right on the edge of the text. If you want to get a button effect like I have here, where it's really separated from the text, we need to add some padding. Padding is going to separate the actual border from the content inside the container. So here I can say padding left 10px, and that'll scoot the left part over. We can also just say padding 10px, and it'll be the whole thing. It'll just get a little bit bigger all the way around. So again, padding, it can be every single edge, or you can say padding left to just get one edge, or padding right to just get the right edge. You've got some options there. Then we can add a background, like we'll give it a pink background. And now let's create the hover effect for our gigantic button. We're going to say anytime I hover over this entire block, I want to change the background to this color, and I want to change the border color to pink, spelled correctly. There we go. And now when I hover over it, it's going to respond like a button. Isn't that cool? Just make sure if you create that hover effect for something that looks like a button, it's actually clickable. Okay, that's a really important thing to do. If that's just an accessibility standard, if you have an interactive element that looks like it can be clickable, please make it clickable so people don't get confused and frustrated. Awesome. All right, we'll go ahead and remove that code. I hope that was helpful. I will hop in there with a little bit of more. I see a few more questions in there. We've got plenty of time, but I'm gonna have another cup of coffee so we make it. All right, there we go. So this question, Luna by T, she just posted this one the other day. My question is, I have a page with a number of different videos. Is there any CSS to link directly to a specific video on the page? That can be solved with an anchor link. Now, the reason we can't do that with those selectors, like just listing to the block ID or to the video, is that's not a specific location inside the HTML document tree. Now, HTML is a document tree that says, we're putting this here first, then we're going to load this, then we're going to load this. An example would be header, page, footer. Those are three aspects of your site that are in the HTML document tree. Using custom code, we can jump ahead to a spot in our page, but we have to add that as a specific target in our HTML. Let me show you on my landing page here. When you click Meet Becca, that's going to scroll you down to this section of that landing page. If we scroll up, here's the whole page. We can scroll down, there's my face. This right here is what I'm linking to, #about. That I tucked into the document tree using an anchor link. So instead of linking directly to an individual video on her page, we need to create that anchor inside the document tree. We can't have something nested super far down that's going to be hard to be visible. It needs to be higher up in that document tree so we can link directly to it. So if we inspect this page, I selected right-click Inspect on my browser. There's a lot happening here. Don't be overwhelmed. Just stick with me here. I am going to select this right here. This is a code block. In this code block, you can see it says SQS code block. In this code block, I've got a block of content and I gave it the div ID about. This right here is my anchor link code. Whoop, don't drag it. There we go. It says div ID equals about. Let's see if I can zoom in a little bit so you can see that. We'll scoot this down and out of the way. There we go. Can we see that on my screen? All right, hopefully we're good. This is what's inside that code block. This is where I've labeled it and given it that unique ID saying jump here when someone goes to about. So let's create one on the page we've got right now. I'll go ahead and close this. We'll jump in here. I'll select edit. And this is a trick I want to show you because this is really important if you're working with auto layout sections. You can't add a code block to an auto layout, but you can add a code block directly above it. So I'm going to select add block and we'll place a code block in this page section up here. Okay. I'm going to minimize it. We'll double click on it and I'm going to say div ID equals example, and then we'll close it. Let's see. I think I did that incorrectly. Let's see. Div ID equals example, and let's close it. /div. What am I doing wrong? I'm totally forgetting something important here. Hang on one second. I don't think I had enough coffee today. Let's grab that anchor link. You see how I went to that really quickly? Oh, that's what it is. I'm using a dash. That's a CSS thing, not an HTML thing. There we go. Div ID equals example. Perfect. Okay, we're going to grab this and we're going to scroll up here and let's place a button just right here in this section. And in this button, we're going to say, I want you to go to #example. Okay, now we'll select save and exit. And when I click on that button, it's going to pull example to the top of the page. Remember how we hit it one section above? Example is hiding right there, and that's going to be pulled to the top of the browser. If we had placed example in here with this text, that would have been pulled to the top and it could get cut off. So if you're using auto layouts or really any section, it's really good to get in the habit of adding it at the bottom of the section right above where you want people to go. So that's the part that's pulled to the top of the screen. So I'll remove that. We'll select Meet Becca, and that's where my anchor is, all the way at the top of the screen. If I had added that anchor right here, all that stuff would get cut off. It'd be kind of hard to read immediately. It wouldn't direct people to where I want them to go. So that's a fun trick for anchors inside the square.co/anchor. That's what I would recommend this person do to link to a specific video. Okay, we've got one more here on my list. We're doing pretty good. 9:37. So many of you joining me today. Thank you so much. I do want to hop in here to interject really quickly. If you're new to CSS, inside the square.co/learn is where you can get my free guide to it. And if you haven't subscribed to my channel already, the more people and good response that I get for this, the more of these I'm going to do. So hopefully we'll be able to hang out together again in the future. Subscribe to my YouTube channel for custom code tutorials specifically for Squarespace. I focus 100% on this platform and will teach you how to customize it with code, how to do things your design menu can't do. It's definitely fun. All right, another sip of code. And if anybody has been to Area 15 in Vegas, this is where the Meow Wolf thing is. It's way too fun. Been there a couple of times. I really enjoy it. That's where that coffee mug came from. Okay, so we've got another question here. The code worked for my first block of text. Could you tell me how to center a second block of text? I wanted to pull out this question specifically because it has to do with how you combine your codes. Let's hop into our CSS panel, and I'll show you with these two blocks of text right here. I'm going to grab their block IDs. I've got this one first, and then I'll grab this block ID. I've got this one next, and let's say I want to do a background of solid pink. We'll type the word pink. Nothing's happening. You want to know why nothing's happening? Because the computer doesn't understand what this is. Symbols are just as important to a computer as all of the other code that we're typing in here. And the symbol I need to use is a comma. That comma separates the selectors. Whether you're using a block ID, you're using an actual selector or a class or anything that has to do with labeling something. So inside this specific block, let's say I did SQS block content. Let's say I want to target that selector inside that block. Maybe just the strong text in here. How about that? That'd be a great example. If I just want this to apply to just the bold text in this specific one, I can add that selector, but I have to add the comma when I'm separating those. Now, let's say I want to have a pink background, but I also want a red border. That's when I need a semicolon. If I had a semicolon, border 5px solid red, we'll get a red border with the pink background. So if you're separating selectors, you want a code to apply to more than one thing, use a comma. If you want a different property and value change inside your code, if you want it to do more than one thing to the actual item, add a semicolon. On my site, I have a list of these. Let's go to inside the square.co, not that page. We will go to additional info. You'll find a list of symbols. I'm not sure what the URL is, so we're going to find it here. So much stuff on my website. If you haven't been there yet, insidethesquare.co/C, or just insidethesquare.co. No / needed. I've got something about symbols in here. I know I wrote that article not too long ago. Filters, let's see. We'll find it here. Gosh, I've got over, I think, 350 blog posts at this point, folks. Lots of stuff to learn about custom CSS. Here's a good one. How to add a note to your CSS. That's an important one to learn. All right, it might be on the next page here. Here we go. Your guide to CSS symbols. Let's check this one out. All right, I will be sure to link to this in the description, and I'll add it right here. There we go. So CSS symbols, lots of good stuff. The comma is what's going to separate them. So if you want to apply a code to multiple aspects of your site, use the comma. Okay, awesome. That was a good one. All right, we've got a question over here. Let's see. I want to begin using animations, Lottie files, and 3D objects attached to scroll triggers. What's the best way to approach this as a beginner? That's a great question. I think the best way to approach that, what I would recommend for anyone who's ready to explore more custom code on their website, would be to create a demo site to practice in. You'll see here I have mydemo.squarespace.com. Create a demo site and practice using Squarespace elements. Yes, you can find plenty of classes and courses out there online. I have a course on custom code as well, insidethesquare.co/beyond. Wherever you learn your custom code, practice specifically inside Squarespace, because this program is going to do things differently than other programs do. There are some nuances to using Fluid Engine versus a Wix website. Showit has a different way of loading mobile menus than Squarespace does. So especially if you're playing with animations, you need to test that specifically in Squarespace. So I strongly recommend exploring Squarespace specifically. That is going to be a great idea for learning custom code no matter where you learn it. So make sure you build yourself a demo site. If you're a Squarespace Circle member, if you've built more than 3 sites, you can apply to be a Circle member. You can get a trial of a website that extends way beyond the 2 weeks that most people have. You can also just get a site and launch it as your testing ground. Sometimes that might be an affordable way, like Squarespace, it is a couple $100 a month, or not month, a year to pay for their hosting. But if you know you're going to be doing a lot of practice, if you want an example to share with your clients at a live URL, don't be afraid to just purchase a practice site. It can save you the hassle of having to restart and refresh every couple of months when your website subscription renewal comes up to play. So that's a great way to try it right there. If you want to learn more about customizing with code, build a demo site. You can't, however, have mydemo.squarespace.com because that's mine. Okay, awesome. Let's scroll up here. Sweet. A lot of people are finding this helpful. I'm so glad. This is fun for me to do too. I love it. I'm going to grab another sip. All right. Mo is asking, what's the best way to save your CSS? I've been literally copying and pasting it into a text file and naming with a date in case something happens, as I've not heard that Squarespace has any type of backup for custom code. Mo, that is exactly what I do as well. Here's a trick for anyone that is using, actually it'll be useful for any program. If you're using PC or Mac, it doesn't matter. When you have a basic text file, what I want to make sure you do is you select format as plain text. That is super duper important because of all these symbols that we're talking about here. Sometimes if you save your code in maybe a Google Doc or even a Notion doc, like I save a lot of my code in Notion, where you save your code, you need to make sure it's saved as plain text, because sometimes programs do automatic text formatting where they might change a comma into adding an extra space to it, or they might put a period before something or capitalize something. All of those can break your code. So save your code externally, save it in a TXT file, save it in Notion as code. Just make sure that you save it as plain text or classified as a code style so no auto formatting happens. The Squarespace CSS cheat sheet used to be this like massive over 100 pages PDF. It started out as like 20 and it really grew. But when it was a PDF, I would field questions almost every day of people saying I copied the code and it didn't work because it would change a small dash into a large dash or add a space where you shouldn't have a space. So wherever you save your code, which you should do externally off of Squarespace, make sure you select plain text if you're using a text editor, or if you use Notion like I do. Let's hop back into my cheat sheet here inside Notion. If you look at any of my snippets, let's see here. I've got a snippet here for the menu block. This is a code block. So if I select copy, it's going to get it correct. It knows it's CSS. It's not going to change this dash into a larger one. It's not going to add a space right here because it thinks I need it. It's going to be formatted as code. So make sure that wherever you're using something, it's formatted as plain text or as code. Okay. And that brings up a really good point, Mo. Everybody, when you're working on your custom code, you should definitely save it outside of Squarespace. It's good to have on hand in case you take on a few other Squarespace projects, but also just nice to have some backup. Okay? Awesome. Let's see here. Any more questions for us? Let's see. I see Modern Dojo asked a question about an affiliate program. Hit me up in my inbox and we'll talk about that. Okay? Support at insidethesquare.co. Let's see if we have any other questions. All right, got some good stuff. All right, we've got that. Okay, I think we're good. No questions so far. Let's see if I have any more listed here. Let's go ahead and do a quick recap, shall we? We'll go full screen to do our recap. There we go. All right, so when we're talking about creating hover effects, we needed to make sure we layered using Fluid Engine, and we targeted the block ID and said anytime you see this block and I'm hovered over it, change its opacity. That's how we showed a second image on a hover in a Fluid Engine section. Then we had this person asking a question about creating a daily quiz challenge. Lots of functionality happening here, lots of response based off of a user action. That's not CSS. However, changing the style of it, the fonts, the colors, the spacing, borders, backgrounds, that is all custom CSS. All right, scrolling down here, this is where I listed HTML. That's the hypertext markup language where things fit in the document tree. CSS changes the style of a site. That's what makes it pretty. And JavaScript is a scripting language that dynamically updates content based on user actions. I also want to mention really quickly, you won't find any JavaScript tutorials on my channel. I tried doing one or two in the past. I try to avoid JavaScript because I use CSS to change things I can't change in the design menu of Squarespace. But things that can alter the way it works, that's dangerous territory. Squarespace is designed to work the way it's designed to work for a very specific reason. It's a responsive website builder. It has features and functionality. I don't like changing that functionality with my own code because as soon as you start playing around with that stuff, it's very easy to break something, especially when they make a major change to the program. You might have to go back and update your JavaScript and you could have something broken on your website that doesn't work. I prefer to just use CSS to change the things I can't change with the design menu. Just a little bit of code on every site, not even a lot. Squarespace can do a lot of stuff, especially with Fluid Engine, but fun things like hover effects and borders and backgrounds, there's some customizing we can do with code. So I only use it if I can't alter it with the design menu, and I try not to use it to add features or functionality that doesn't exist in Squarespace because you can break it. Okay, this question right here for Amy was talking about how to target the bullet points for a block ID. This asterisk is part of the whole name. So what we needed to do is add the block ID at the very beginning of the code, saying inside this block, anywhere you see this thing, then do this. That was what the CSS statement turned into. Okay. Sarah asked about her code showing up at the top of the page. She was using page header code injection. And when you add code there, you can have multiple types of code. So you need to put it in style brackets. It's the only way that'll work. So style brackets tell the computer, this is CSS code. Just don't forget to add /style at the end of it so the computer knows you're done making style changes. Otherwise, it's going to keep looking for style changes and it can cause some problems. So make sure you close your style brackets. Okay. Olivia wanted to know about, I don't think we did this one. Oh, we did. Okay. So we kind of covered this one. I just didn't address the question directly. She couldn't understand why the drop cap wasn't working on her about page. She copied the code from my tutorial and applied it to 3 blocks of text, but nothing happened. She was applying it to 3 blocks of text in a row. That was the solution we discovered there. She wasn't separating them with a comma. And remember, the symbols are very important. I linked to this in the chat here, but I've got a guide to symbols. Make sure you add a comma between the different selectors or classes or blocks that you're targeting. That way your code will work. As long as you're targeting the right thing, and then you add this code at the end of it. I also have some other troubleshooting tips on my site. We'll go to insidethesquare.co/code help. Anytime you run into an issue, I have a whole list of troubleshooting tips here that can help you, like adding exclamation point important. That's a really good one, so definitely check that out. All right, now scrolling down here, this one was Luna by T wanted to know how to link directly to a specific video, and we talked about using anchor links. And my favorite technique with anchor links is to leave the actual anchor link in the section above where you want to take people to. So here inside this example, we'll just go to the main site and we'll select Meet Becca, and that'll scroll down to my anchor link here at the top. If I place my anchor link in this section, this would be way high up at the top, and I wanted that centered. So I put my anchor link at the section above, which is what I recommend a lot of people do, especially if you're using an auto layout. Okay, and scrolling down here, the code worked for the first block of text. How did they center a second one? You add that comma and keep going with your code. Okay, that was a lot of stuff. We covered some fun things. There were some questions after as well. Let's see. Okay, we've got another, 2 more questions and then we'll call it done. I'll have my last sip of coffee here. And before I even get to those last 2, I just want to say thank you so much for joining me live. I feel really pumped to work on some more code today. I have a big list of tutorials that I was going to get through, and this got me really excited to get to work today. So thanks for joining me live and throwing some questions in, interacting with me. I love it. Happy you're here. And if you're watching the replay, thanks for watching the replay. Happy you want to learn more about code. Okay, so we had 2 questions right here. One was asking about quite a lot of CSS. How do I know where one bit ends and another one starts? You can leave yourself a note. We'll hop into my resources here. Go to resources, and I'll share this in the chat as well, just a link directly to it. How to leave yourself a note in your CSS. This can help you sort through things. So in this example, I've identified this is my cookie banner code. This is my video code. I was consulting with someone who has quite a few people on their team. They leave initials in their code as well. So it might say cookie BH for Becca Harpain. That's what I would leave in that code to let them know that was mine. It was fun. The code they used for me, they labeled ITS for inside the square. I thought that was cool. But this is how you can leave a note in your code to keep track of it when you've got a lot of stuff going on. I realized my countdown timer just showed up for some reason. We're not ending anytime soon, so I'm not sure why that's there, but I'll pop this in the chat. That's how you leave yourself a note. And let's see if I can turn off that timer. That's really weird. There we go. All right, let's move this back up because this is my background. There we go. Okay, we're back into it. So that's how you leave yourself a note. When you have a lot of CSS, I strongly recommend it. We can look at some of the CSS in the background of Inside the Square here really quick. Let's take a look. I'll show you some of my notes. All right, website. So many pages, my gosh. Website tools, custom CSS. and it'll load. There we go. So here you can say, this is my Lightbox code. This is my announcement bar code. This is where I add little notes for my selected text. All list items get a border on my site. That's part of my design. These are the notes that I add inside my custom CSS. So I hope you find that information helpful. All right, let's see here. You're very welcome. Awesome. Okay, let's see. Any tips on how to give a link to people template profile photos since the element doesn't come with the URL on the image, but it has to be a button? That is a great question, and I struggled with the same thing. So what we're talking about here is inside Squarespace, when you add a list section, this is an auto layout. Technically, it's now labeled people. You'll find it under the people section. We'll go ahead and add one to our site here. When you have this particular type of auto layout section, you'll notice I can't add a content block. I can't move these around. These are auto layouts that are already formatted. When I select edit content, I can toggle on a button for the whole section or a button for the individual item, but that's the only clickable part. What if I'm featuring different people and I want people to be able to click on the person's photo or their bio or something else to go to that specific page to learn more about that person or that service? For that, I have a tutorial for you, my friend. Let's go ahead and go to my site. I don't know if we need to go see all of my CSS here. We'll go ahead and go to insidethesquare.co and we'll grab that tutorial so I can link to it for you. If we hop in and browse all, I'm just going to type in list and we'll find it rather quickly. Here we go. Play some hold music for me. Hopefully it'll show us something. Come on, computer. This always happens when you're sharing your screen, right? That's definitely fun. Okay, it'll probably be under layouts. We'll start there, see if we can find it. Again, I've got like over 300 tutorial blog posts here on my site, so there's quite a lot of content. Let's see, maybe we'll just find it on my YouTube channel. How about that? We'll go to youtube.com/inside the square, and here we will search for list. Let's see, we'll just search for list. What do we find here? List section tutorial. I know it's in here. I'm sorry I don't have this right off the top of my head, but it is a specific code that we can use. Here we go. Clickable list item, the entire item. We'll pause this. I will pop this in the chat for you. This is the code that will teach you how to expand that button so it covers the whole thing and the whole thing becomes a list. So this is the whole code, but I strongly recommend watching the tutorial so you can see exactly how it works. This specific code has some very important changes like the height and the margin bottom. Those will be unique to your specific size of image and the size of text that you use. So please watch the video so you understand how to change those specific property values to fit your site. That works for my example. It's not going to work for you. So you need to watch the video to learn how to change that part of the code so it works perfectly for your specific list section. All right, and a little pro tip here, just in case you're not aware, when you're adding a section, if you see this little eye icon on the top right-hand side, that's an auto layout. You're not going to see that on a standard section. These are regular Fluid Engine sections, but if we scroll down here into images, you'll see that eye. This becomes a gallery section, but not all of the image sections have that eye. This is a regular one. This is a Fluid Engine section, but this right here means you're about to select an auto layout. So if you see that, make sure you understand you can't add content blocks to it. You can only adjust the content that's there. Okay, we'll go ahead and select save and we'll exit. I'm not doing anything. Go back up to my title. There we go. Fantastic. Okay, I hope that was so helpful. Oh, you're so welcome. All right, fantastic. Thank you guys for joining me today. This was so much fun. I really enjoyed this coffee and code. I'd love to do another one. Hop into the comments and let me know what day, time should we plan on doing this. I'm not great at keeping a regular schedule thanks to life outside the square, but as long as I have a little bit of advance warning, I can definitely hop in here again and do some live custom code. I have the entire screen background already prepared. I already made that, so might as well use it again, right? Put some effort into this, figuring out how to use Ecamm. That was a lot of fun. Thanks for joining me today. And enjoy this cup of coffee, probably brush my hair and go outside. I can see the sun shining through for once. I live in Vancouver, Washington, so it doesn't get sunny very often. I think I'll go enjoy it. Thanks for being here today. And again, if you're brand new to CSS, insidethesquare.co/learn, you can grab my guide there. If you want to learn more about the selectors that I use in Squarespace, insidethesquare.co/CSS, that's where my CSS cheat sheet is. My massive collection of the codes and selectors I've used for years to modify Squarespace. You can get lifetime access there. And if you want to buy my next cup of coffee, feel free to head over to buymeacoffee.com/inside the square. All right, thanks again for joining me today, everyone. I sincerely appreciate it. And most importantly, have fun with your Squarespace website. Bye for now.